Today we are going to talk about Islam, the meaning of the word Islam. Now, many people, and some scholars included, have stated that the word Islam linguistically comes from the Arabic root salama, which means peace. The word Islam means submission. This is its linguistic meaning, submission. In the context of the religion, it means submission to the will of God. Now, of course, when we say the word submission, for most people, it has a type of negative connotation. It produces in our minds and in our hearts a type of negative idea. And that's because we are constantly indoctrinated with the idea of freedom, especially living in the West, the idea that we are a free society. One of the statements that is very common you hear people saying in the West is, this is a free country, this is a free society. And often we hear politicians in the West talking about how we are free nations and how we want to spread freedom like the freedom that we have across the world. Of course, in reality, the idea that we are free is really propaganda. What I would like us all to think about today is this concept of submission and freedom. And I would really like us to question how free we really are. Let's think about ourselves. Let's think about our lives. All of us, we live in societies and in communities. All of us, human beings, have some concept, some idea of what we think is right and what we think is wrong, what we think is good, what we think is evil, what we think is appropriate behavior or inappropriate behavior, what we often call good manners and bad manners. So all of us have some idea, and very often we find that in one country something may be considered to be good manners, and in another country that self-same thing may be considered to be bad manners. For example, in some countries, if you have a nice meal and then you let out wind through your mouth, you burp as we call it, that's considered very disgusting and a revolting thing to do. But in other countries considered an act of appreciation that you've enjoyed the meal. It just gives you an example of how in two different cultures exactly the same thing can be considered to be in one culture good manners and another culture bad manners. But my point is this, is that all of us have a viewpoint, a way through which and by which we look at the world around us and we understand and we make judgments about the people around us and about the world around us. No one is free from that. And in a very real sense, we are submitting to those ideas. Let's just think for a few minutes. Where do we get those ideas from? Who told us that this is right and this is wrong, that this is good and this is evil? Who told us that these are good manners and bad manners? Where did you get that information from? Think about it for a few minutes. Maybe some of you will be saying, our parents, that's where we got this knowledge from. Others will be saying, our teachers at school. Some will be saying, our friends. Some will be saying, our society, our religion, our government, the laws of our country. One of the strongest and the most powerful influences in the way that we think and the way that we look at the world is the media, especially the television, the films that we watch, the music that we listen to, the radio programs that we tune into. They have a very powerful effect in shaping the way that we look at the world. And in a very real sense, we are submitting to those ideas. We are submitting to those concepts. I'm sure many of us have been to school. And at school, I'm sure also many of us had to wear a school uniform. And I'm also pretty sure that a lot of us didn't really like wearing that school uniform. Well, if we live in free countries and it's a free society, why do you have to wear a uniform that you don't like? Why do you have to dress in clothes that you don't want to? What does it mean then, I live in a free society? What we realize is that we are not really free at all. All of us have to follow laws. And there are many laws that we find regulate our lives in so many different ways. And in a very real sense, we submit to those laws. What does submission mean? Think about the word submission. What does it mean? When you submit, what are you doing? You are giving in. You are surrendering. In other words, when you submit, you do something that maybe you don't necessarily want to do, but you do it because you are told to, or because you know that it's good for you, or that you know that if you do this other thing, it's bad for you. Often we submit to an authority that we believe and that we understand is more intelligent and more well-informed than us. That's why we go to a doctor. If the doctor says to us, well, you know, you've got this problem and you're going to need an operation, and if you don't have an operation in the next, 2 days, you'll die. Most of us don't think about studying the disease, finding out are there other cures, so on and so forth. We don't have the energy, we don't have the time, we don't have the knowledge foundations in order to do that. In other words, we trust the doctor and we do what the doctor says, even though sometimes the operation may be threatening our life, but we'll take that advice from the doctor. In that sense, in that very real sense, we are submitting. So our life is in fact full of submission. We submit to many different things. We submit to many different people in our lives. The idea that we are free is really a type of propaganda. No human being is free. Everybody submits to someone or something. The question is, who do you submit to? What do you submit to? This is the real question.